see, in the book, I talk about this idea of the trifurcation of work, where we split work up into three areas of AI only, AI plus a human, and then human only work. And your job, whether you're in marketing, sales, finance, accounting, is to figure out what parts of your work can be handed off to AI fully, seamlessly, safely, securely. What parts of your work should a human come into the loop and double check like what the AI did, or pass along information from one system to another? And then what are those areas where you do not want AI involved?
Welcome to Future Fuzz, the digital marketing podcast.
Welcome into Future Fuzz, the digital marketing podcast. I'm Vince Quinn, and today we're talking about how to build virtual specialized personas in AI. And joining us for this conversation is Zac Engler. He is the author of the new book, Turning on Machines. Zac, welcome to Future Fuzz.
Thanks so much, Vince. So excited to be here and have a fun chat today about AI.
Well, yeah, let's actually start by harnessing your excitement for being on this show and your obsession with AI, because I'm going to peel back the curtain a little bit. So normally before people come onto the show, there's a pre-interview process where we get to know each other a little bit and talk about some topics for the show. You came in with a level of preparation based on AI that absolutely melted my brain. There have been some fun and wacky things that have happened with this show, but I've never quite had an experience of the way that you prepared for the pre-interview. Can you just give people a little bit of background of what you did before we sat down for that conversation?
Yeah, for sure. So I went to your podcast site on Apple Podcasts and grabbed all of your episodes, provided that information to Claude, and then had it review all of the transcripts. Then I went over to YouTube because I think you have a presence there as well, and grabbed all of the YouTube information just to see if there was anything that was different. Ran that through Claude as well and said, analyze all the shows. Tell me, what are the topics that trend well? What are the topics that tend to not do so well? What are the hosts like? I think I also asked, I plan to talk about a couple ideas here. Is there any history of that in the show? And you guys have a ton of episodes, so I couldn't have done that all myself in any short order. And within a matter of about 15 minutes, I had a whole overview from Claude on what your show is about, what topics trend well, what you guys are like in terms of working with, and the interview styles. And then my topics were cleared as well. So the idea behind either building virtual personas with AI or building knowledge graphs were things that hadn't got cleared on the show yet. So super excited to be chatting about the persona piece today.
Yeah, and I loved all of it, man, because it was really impressive. I mean, the level of analysis and everything, it is definitely something we haven't talked about, and I haven't had anybody ever present a topic to me. So usually it's I'm always filtering all the stuff out and going, okay, well, I think it could be this or that could be that. And you're like, no, you haven't talked about this. I was like, we haven't talked about this. This is great. So all of that to say, yeah, you are tremendously qualified for this exact situation. I couldn't be happier to have you here. So let's talk about virtual personas then, shall we? So first off, give people a little bit of background about just what a virtual persona is when it comes to AI.
For sure. So, you think about a busy executive, they've got too much work to do in general, let alone preparing for upcoming meetings. Maybe you're on the sales side, you're preparing to meet with other clients or executives. And there's a famous quote from Mike Tyson, which he says, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yep.
And my whole idea with these virtual personas is let the AI punch you in the face, right? Let's build a virtual version of that person you're about to go interact with, of those people you're about to go present to, or of that audience you're trying to capture. And let's fill that out with as much information as possible about those particular demographics or areas. So you can use public-facing information, right? If it's an individual, that could be their social media presence. You can find a lot of information there. If it's a group or demographic, right, you can build out a virtual persona as a custom agent in Claude, as a custom gem in Gemini, as a custom GPT in ChatGPT, or as an agent in Copilot. It doesn't matter where you do it. The idea is you're just filling out and adding as much information and as much background for this virtual agent to then adapt and adopt the context of what is that persona, who is that person, and then you open up the floodgates to say, what do you want this conversation to be like? And you can start chatting with that virtual version of your target market or your target audience. You can have insightful conversations. You can say like, tell me about yourself, right? To better understand that audience. You could have difficult conversations, right? If you have to have a tough conversation with your boss or a coworker or something, right? Like Steve keeps microwaving fish in the microwave, and I need to I need to talk about, you know, how we can avoid that in the future or whatever. You can have that tough conversation with the AI first, and then go on to your target audience or individual from there.
Yeah, and out of curiosity, have you ever seen the show The Rehearsal with Nathan Fielder?
No.
Oh my
I have to
God.
check that
Okay,
one
you
out.
have to watch The Rehearsal. I can't even. Okay, the whole thing
Okay.
is basically based on that premise. Is if you've got a regular person and put them in a scenario where he gets like actors and builds sets that are exact replicas of situations that people are in, and then they
Okay.
relive the scenario like 40 times or like an insane number before they go and confront the issue. It's like this massive,
Sure.
crazy person in science experiment. But it's kind of like that. So great show, but totally. And part of the idea is just to paint the picture for the people who've seen The Rehearsal. Like that's kind of it. And
Yeah.
what's so fun about that is because I've done some of that experimenting with these custom GPTs is where I've been. And to be able to get like PDFs of books that I've read, and I value that information.
Yep.
Want to use that as a source, like taking that, like you did for this show with analyzing transcripts of things, to be able to pile all of that information together and say, okay, I want you to act like this author for this scenario with this thing that they've talked about. And now how can you analyze this marketing plan that I'm putting together, or this email that I'm sending a prospect? And like the simplicity of that has been really great. And just out of curiosity, because obviously those are some sources of information, what are some other good things that you generally think are that you should consider when you're building that foundation for these kinds of virtual personas?
Absolutely. So I do a lot of executive consulting in my role as a chief AI officer for C4, and meeting with executives, especially CEOs, for example. They've got to do board meetings, and there's a lot of numbers, there's a lot of data to get crunched in those meetings and to know what's going on. So one thing that can be helpful is not only building this virtual version of perhaps your most difficult board member or creating a virtual board. There's other tools out there like NotebookLM, for example, where you could go upload all of your information around what you have to talk about, and then have a custom made podcast generated for you. And I've done this for interviews. I've done this for consulting gigs, where I'll then listen to that podcast, before I go to bed. I'll listen to it on the drive into work, and, synthesize all that information, that idea that you're not just going to read the PowerPoint 10 times and memorize it, or, have your team provide all these reports to you. Instead, you can leverage AI and start doing multimodal learning so that it really gets ingrained and all that information like the back of your hand. Going into those board meetings becomes a little less intimidating. Going into those tough conversations can be the same thing.
Yeah, and so for people then who can kind of see this conceptually of like, wow, I can use it in all these cool ways to really make myself so much stronger with these big moments. Generally speaking, I think one of the problems is overwhelm of tools, right? There's so many different sources out there. You've listed a couple of different things. What kind of guidance would you give for somebody who's looking to get started? And like, what tools do I even use?
For sure. So the big four of Claude from Anthropic, ChatGPT from OpenAI, Copilot from Microsoft, or oh man, what's the fourth one that I'm blanking on?
Let's see.
What did I skip?
Claude.
I got Claude,
GPT,
ChatGPT, Copilot.
I mean, I don't know if Gemini qualifies for that.
Gemini, yes, Gemini from Google.
There we go.
Sorry. Thanks. Anyways, those big four, they're not slouching, they're not sleeping. They pick up on all these little trends of what's the next shiny object that we can, vacuum up and fold into our platform. So I would be less worried about all these individual tools that you can get lost in, and focus more on becoming an expert in one of the big four. Because and how you determine which one of those four, like figure out what your lane is. If it's your company's using Copilot and it's enterprise wide and you have an enterprise audience, then it probably makes sense to live, eat, sleep, and breathe Copilot stuff. If you're a software developer or writing code, Claude is probably the way to go. And all these tools have relatively the same capabilities and features. It's just different flavors, and some of them tend to be a little bit better in certain areas than others. If you're a marketing person, Claude does fantastic in creative writing. It can handle large amounts of information as well. So that might be an area to get started. But that this idea that shiny object syndrome is very real. Like you can pick up little nuggets along the way as you go, but like focus in on one key of area of the big four first and get really good at that because these tools are incredibly powerful. And you can cover a lot of ground just with one of these, let alone all the other AI tools that are out in the marketplace right now.
Future Fuzz is sponsored by SalesSource, B2B pipeline management and sales growth for your business.
Yeah, and so to take that to a step further, right? Because obviously, for like an employee or an executive to do that for themselves and sharpen themselves up is one thing. But then when you get to this company-wide effect where it's like, okay, we're going to implement Copilot across the entire company, then obviously we've seen massive shifts with just how the workforce operates and what is the workforce, right? So when you're thinking about what those trends are, I mean, first off, how serious and how great has it been from your experience with all of this? And at what point is it too far? Is honestly the question.
In the book, I talk about this idea of the trifurcation of work, where we split work up into three areas of AI only, AI plus a human, and then human only work. And your job, whether you're in marketing, sales, finance, accounting, is to figure out what parts of your work can be handed off to AI fully, seamlessly, safely, securely. What parts of your work should a human come into the loop and double check like what the AI did or, pass along information from one system to another? And then what are those areas where you do not want AI involved, or maybe AI is not ready to do that work yet? And a good example of this is in sales. Like there's tons of companies looking for voice agents to do their virtual sales calls now. And they're quickly finding that people don't want to talk to AI. They want to have a relationship and talk to another person. And so you're seeing companies dial back their use of AI for that regard and pivoting it to how could we automate everything else that a sales employee does so that they can focus on building deeper relationships and spend more time with the clients, right? Let's automate the CRM notes that they take. Let's transcribe all their calls. Let's take action on the data that's coming from their calls and feed that into the marketing team and into the customer support team using AI to, automate a lot of the back end and a lot of the admin stuff. And that's, I think, where things can move to the future of how do we create that white glove custom experience that nobody else can and automate away all the other mundane stuff so that we can, play to our team's strengths.
Yeah, that would be nice. As somebody who deals with HubSpot to manage all these things in a CRM and has to do all the admin work of sending the emails in addition to sales calls and everything else, please, Zach, please. I would love to do all of that 100%. That would make my life so much easier. But yeah, I think it is so fascinating from that standpoint of the overcommitment, right? It's like, oh, well, we can just, because I think the calculus has become incredibly simple of we can save how much money by getting rid of X people. Great. Let's do that. And then you make that adjustment and then you're like, oh, okay, yeah, all these things are done terribly. The technology isn't there yet. And now you've got to either like bring people back. You've lost customers. Like the overall tangential cost has felt so much greater than the cash saved, I think is really what it's boiled down to.
Well, 100%. And this idea that a human with AI is going to be vastly more capable and powerful than AI alone or a person alone. So when you start eliminating people from the equation, you start losing this capability at your organization to maximize your market share, maximize your productivity, maximize your reach, whatever it may be. And for those listening in the marketing vein, for example, going back to this persona idea, right? Like if you build a virtual persona of your target market, you can go pay for market analysis. You could go pay for product testing. You can get people's feedback in focus groups and things like that. But why not start with a virtual version of all that so that you can, instead of having to go pay for all of those services and take the time to go do all those things, you can hone in on the areas that you want to target much more effectively and efficiently to begin with. AI is not going to solve all your problems and it's not going to answer all your questions, but it's going to get you a little bit further down the road so that you have a better idea of how might this audience respond or how might we tweak and adjust this to be better prepared for the market changes that are coming our way. What's our competition doing and how might that impact our customers' perception of us and the competition, right? You can now have all of this virtualized and kind of create this virtual playground to explore and test things out. And then you can still go through the standard steps, but you have a much tighter focus on what you're trying to achieve. Does that make
Oh,
sense?
it makes complete sense. And from somebody who's experienced it in a sense of the back and forth element that you get and the times where it will bring something to the table where you're like, I never would have thought of that, but this is genius. And being able to go and develop is such a relief. And that's as simple as copy for a social media post. Hey, what I put together is way too long and wordy. So here it goes, it's reducing it. And then let me go and still edit that. Like there's all these different layers where it's really advancing things. It's not giving you that final version, but it is
Right.
such a lift and a time saver. And then, okay, all I need to do is apply my experience, my expertise, and like go and shape this thing a little bit. But yeah, the process is infinitely faster that way. And so for people then, because you mentioned safety, which is obviously, I mean, just a massive issue. So whether it's company wide, whether it's individual, as people are starting to try to determine, I want to maximize my efficiency. I want to get these bots to come and help me and have these virtual personas.
Yeah.
Like, what things should they be mindful of when it comes to having proper safety when they do essentially outsource to AI?
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the first things is this idea of the sycophantic spiral, right? So AI is made, or at least the large language models, when you interact with them, how many times do you hear, great job, Vince? I love that idea. I think you're on the right track here, right?
Yep.
Like ChatGPT probably says that to you at almost every chance it gets. And it only gets worse the more you expand away from your own particular domain of expertise, right? Because once you start venturing into areas where you don't know what's real, what's a hallucination, right? It becomes more and more dangerous for, are you going to start pursuing, something? Are you going to go write code for, a product or that you have no idea how to do, and it ends up being full of holes, it ends up presenting risks to the organization? Or maybe you're going to go upload information to the AI because it was so friendly and you're going to share things with it that you're probably not supposed to. It's going to train on your data, and then your competition can essentially go chat with the AI and learn that information, right? So I always try to say, like, exercise caution in areas where you're uploading intellectual property, confidential information, personally identifiable information, public health information, whatever it may be. Always exercise extreme caution in any areas of like compliance, regulation, legal authority, right? Like,
Yeah, for sure. Because, for
yeah.
example, let me give you something that happened to me literally last night. So I
Okay.
have I have a calendar link that I've been using for a long time, but it wasn't connected to my CRM. So I have all these emails from like 2 years of using this thing that are not in my CRM. I need to get them over there. So I'm going and
Hmm.
processing that information. And when I put it in an Excel sheet, all the names from that calendar, they're all in one cell. It's not a first name and last name. I need to split
Oh,
that,
sure.
right? So my first thought was, okay, well, I'm going to get all these names and emails and I'll throw it into GPT. But then I'm like, wait, I don't want to do that. Like that's not necessarily the right thing to do here. So as much
Hmm.
as my normal instinct, and there's times where obviously I can process a spreadsheet and do all this cool stuff, I was like, no, I'm going to manually separate these names because I don't want to put them all in there. Now, first off, was that a proper decision or was I overly cautious in that decision?
Well, you were being overly cautious, but that's better than the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
Because if there's no other information included in that, if it's just name, first and last name, that's one thing, right? But if now you have emails or addresses or bank account numbers or whatever, like then you start venturing down the path of how information relates to each other and how that could then be learned by the system or accessed from an outside party. So great to exercise extreme caution. I think there's probably an Excel formula where you could have done that as well, but
Probably. It's
that's
not my
beside the point,
specialty for sure.
right? I saw one guy who posted like, my decades of not learning Excel are about to pay off because ChatGPT and Claude are now, Excel natives. But that being said, it's like you said, it's better to be cautious than the other way around. But things like that, those are pretty rudimentary tasks where there's not a lot of other data that could be tied to that person. So you probably would have been okay to have ChatGPT split that up for you, make a table, copy paste it into your CRM.
40 minutes of my life I won't get back. But what are you going to do? It's love, right? I care. So
Absolutely.
price of trying to do it the right way. All right. Well, Zach, I
Well,
mean,
and have you turned off the learning features?
so yes, I
Okay, so that's the big one, right?
Yeah, but I've heard times, and you tell me, but I've heard times where people have turned that feature off and yet at times have seen that information still spill out. So it doesn't seem to be a
Correct.
given that even holds.
Correct. So it depends on where that information is coming from. If it's already public information, that might be why it's resurfacing. But yeah, again, it's better like just turn it off because they don't need to know your stuff from the get-go. But then after the fact, it's still good to exercise caution on what information you're uploading and how.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, Zac, this has been so much information, so much fun. Your enthusiasm for it is great, which I really love. Like, it's just your passion for the subject is evident, which is why you clearly wrote a book about it. So, for people who want to check out the book, what is the best way to do that?
Yeah, so if you visit turningonmachines.com, you can find the book there. I've got direct links to pick up a copy. It's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and a handful of other sites now as well. But direct to me is great because you can also go visit my blog, which is called Machines Learning. And you can go all the way back to 2016 when I started writing about how AI is going to change the world. The timestamps are still there. You can see what I was talking about back then. These crazy ideas are not so crazy anymore. I have some more crazy ideas of where things are going to go in the next 10 years, so you can learn about that too.
Okay.
And I've included parts of that in the book, so it should be a great read. A CIO that I work with and is a close friend of mine, we met up about 2 weeks ago. I got him the book. Last week we had a happy hour, and he goes, "I'm already halfway through your book. I didn't realize it'd be this good." So I took that as a personal shot and a vote of confidence all at the same time. It was great.
Yeah, it's funny how those things work. All right, well, I'm glad it's going so well. Make sure you check out Turning on Machines. And Zac, thank you so much for joining the show.
Amazing. Thanks, Vince. It was great being here.
Thanks for tuning in and making the choice to listen to this podcast. If you liked what you've heard today, please don't forget to subscribe.